make some brief remarks on the state of data management, and I suppose after 35 years I can take a somewhat objective perspective. The short bit is that it's quite hopeful. We have proven the effectiveness of the techniques that we've applied, and we need to continue to improve at the process of incorporating new developments into this overall. Our next challenge in data management is really to get this concept more widely understood in general, and the best way we can do it is looking at data literacy. Now, I'll get to this conclusion through a little quick journey here. One of the first books that I encountered Japan and Japanese culture in was the book The Reckoning by David Halberstam, and it's reviewed as a cautionary tale that makes us understand why we weep for America at the same time that we buy Japanese. And I think it was just a wonderful summary of the histories of Ford and Nissan in parallel times, going through about 100 years to the mid 1980s, and looking at the very significant changes in terms of what happened to these organizations where expertise was insourced and outsourced, and manufacturing was similarly uh, uh, treated as a fungible expertise in here. This happened with steel and other industries. I remember visiting a steel factory when I was in Yokohama, and it was just amazing some of the developments that were going on, particularly with respect to the sensor development and things that were there. And this leads me to recall, of course, the sad case of us not paying attention to Deming and other cultures paying attention to it and benefiting results. I believe that data will be an equally important source of change for organizations as they go forward in history. I mentioned before that data illiteracy is a very serious societal challenge. The fact that we have to deal with fake news and have all sorts of problems with it in our country, whether we're worried about whether the Elvis is still alive or whether the President of the United States is making false and misleading claims on this. It has led to an erosion of public trust that has truly reached a new point in American society. This is the first time in our history where, when asked, a group of Americans have rated threats to democracy as the number one choice, number one issue facing the nation. And this is tremendously important because, of course, it leads to things like the events of January 6th and, of course, the inevitable repercussions. Appropriately taking, so far, 850 people have been arrested on this particular activity. Not that they're parallel, but it is an interesting piece that our federal government has now mandated some of these practices, which will place 1/3 of our economy under new rules, starting effectively at this point. The rules are that federal data is open by default. This completely turns on its head the existing model. That non-political CDOs, chief data officers, are mandated by all organizations at a certain level, and that the use of open data and open models is required for a policy evaluation perspective as well, and that there are some severe penalties that occur if you don't pay attention to them. Um, I believe this will be a bigger impact on society and also a good experiment for us, especially when you consider things. And I really like this book from Amy Webb, where she says quite simply that if you're not working for one of 9 specific organizations, 3 of which are Chinese owned, that there is no hope of you doing anything significant with AI around this. And she makes an excellent case on this. So the call for action here is to create the demand for a data literate society as a societal imperative, and focusing specifically on knowledge workers, where we have codes of conduct and employment agreements that can help to motivate and set standards for the behavior of everybody, and in the process provide society-wide consistent learning materials and consistent access to technologies. This will allow us to move forward in a way where data management will and isn't seen as an oddity, but instead it's seen as something that's an imperative, a capability that organizations need to develop. And it's fun today in the sense that I'm working more with organizations that are trying to refine their existing practices than they are getting convinced to start them. So I think in general we're in a good place, and I hope you see things the same way. Interested in your thoughts, of course.